Thank you very much, and welcome to the 2015 Mayoral Debate. We're excited you joined us this evening. Tonight, WAI and KBB are live streaming this debate on behalf of Alamo Community Group, and I'm very honored to be able to moderate this forum tonight. We do have a few ground rules that we will have for our audience and for our mayoral candidates. Each candidate's going to be given a total of 3 minutes to introduce themselves to the audience tonight. A total of 3 questions will be asked of each candidate by the moderator, in which each candidate will be given a total of 2 minutes to answer each question in the order they are asked. No candidate will be permitted to redirect any questions to the other candidates. Candidates are to address the moderator and audience only when asked a question. The candidates will be cut off at the 2-minute time should they take longer than the allotted time to answer a question. A few submitted questions from the general audience and Twitter will be asked, in which each candidate will be given the opportunity to answer, and they'll have a 2-minute time limit for each question. For the audience, questions will be written on a slip of paper and vetted by staff from the Alamo Community Group to determine its appropriateness. A total of 2 questions will be asked unless time permits us to do more. In the interest of time, we ask that the audience members hold their clapping and voice of support until the end of the forum. No yelling, no swearing, and other obscenities will be tolerated. Anyone found in violation will be asked to leave the event. So they've taken a random order of the candidates in order to determine who will give the first introductions. And the order tonight will be Commissioner Atkinson, Mayor Taylor, Representative Villarreal, Major Martinez, and Senator Van de Putte. So I don't think Commissioner Atkinson is here at the moment, but we will we'll let him in as soon as he gets here. So Mayor Taylor, you have the first opening statement.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Can you hear me? Okay, good evening, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here. I thank everyone for taking the time to come out and participate in this important forum. And I'm so glad to be here at Bentley. It's not unfamiliar to me because I worked in the affordable housing arena for quite a while and actually was on site. I think we were under construction or when you had just first opened. So it's great to see how wonderful the place looks several years later. And also during my time as District 2 council member, I had a chance to visit with residents over here. So for those who don't know me, again, my name is Ivy. I've had the privilege of serving and honor of serving as your mayor since last July, and prior to that, serving as a District 2 council member, as a member of the San Antonio City Council, representing this part of town as well as the Near East Side. Prior to that, I worked at an affordable housing nonprofit called Merced Housing Texas, and before that, I was a city employee. So as you can see, I've got a great deal of municipal level experience, both on the inside as an employee and then also serving as an elected official, first as council member and now as mayor. So during that time, I've stayed focused on some of the same key issues which revolve around creating ladders of opportunities for our families here in San Antonio and creating great, stable neighborhoods for our San Antonians. I think we've been very successful in doing that in a collaborative fashion. I'm asking you today for your support to allow me to continue in leadership as your mayor because I bring that great experience to the table, having served on the council and now having this experience as mayor, having been a city employee. We've had a lot of turnover at the council, and I think it's important for us to have some continuity in leadership. And also, I'm someone who's very focused on getting things done on behalf of the community and listening to all sides and everyone who wants to participate in dialogue and how we can make our community better. Of course, I think it's very important for us as a community to stay competitive economically, for our city government to be responsive, and for all of us to come together and work together as a community, even when we may not all agree on certain issues. So I look forward to the dialogue this evening and the opportunity to share a little more with you about my position on issues and the tremendous experience that I bring to the table. And I'm thankful for the privilege and honor that I've had of serving as mayor and council member here in San Antonio. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. It's a pleasure to be here with you today, tackling our city's greatest challenges will require a mayor who has integrity, who has a vision for a united, stronger San Antonio, who has foresight. I have one single goal for our city. It is heartfelt. I want our city to be a city of opportunity for our children. Affordable housing is a part of that vision. We can build a city where working families who are looking for a decent, affordable home have options. They can find one near a bus rapid transit line, near one of our linear parks, downtown, or near any one of our major employment centers. We can work together to build healthy neighborhoods where children can walk safely to school, where our kids can hop on a bike and safely and quickly get to a trailhead that connects them to our larger emerging linear park system. We can have more community policing, and we can reduce the response times for our first responders. We can build a city where our hard-working families, folks who are aspiring for a better life, can work and get ahead and share in the general economic growth of San Antonio. But to accomplish these things, we need to address a couple of important ingredients. Leadership is important. Number one, we need a mayor whose word is good. Our mayor is in the business of explaining, negotiating, compromising. Fundamentally, the job of the mayor is to communicate. And we know that all of these activities are not possible unless the mayor's word is good. If it is not, then it's like building a home on sandy soil. The foundation will crack and the damage will be extensive. Here's what you can expect from me and what we can do together. Number one, when I give you my word, I mean it. Number two, we will keep a lid on property taxes so home ownership will be affordable. Number three, we will embrace technology and innovation in city government so that we can do more with less. We will never pass regulations that favor one industry, like the taxi industry, at the expense of the broader community. Finally, we will resolve the contract negotiations between police and fire. We will do it in a way that pays our first responders respect, treats them fairly, and is sustainable for this generation of first responders and us, the beneficiaries of their work, and generations to come.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Paul Martinez. I'm a retired combat veteran of the United States Army, where I had the honor of serving with some of our nation's finest paratroopers and cavalry division soldiers. First of all, I do want to thank the Alamo Community Group for inviting me to this forum. I hope to show you that are here, as well as those that are watching this online at this time, that there are more than 4 candidates running for the position of mayor in San Antonio. And so I'm truly honored to have been invited to this forum. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, my wife, Yvonne Martinez, and I have been married for 23 years. We have 3 awesome children. Our oldest daughter is about to graduate from college. Our youngest daughter is about to start college. And our son is currently in middle school. My wife, who is also running for the District 8 City Council seat, is currently a college and career readiness technician with Northside Independent School District. I was born on the south side of San Antonio and raised on the west side. After I graduated from Sidney Lanier High School, I chose to attend the University of Texas at San Antonio, where I graduated with a Bachelor's of Business Administration degree. 1 month later, I raised my right hand and swore an oath and enlisted in the United States Army. Shortly after that, 2 years actually, I raised my hand again after applying for OCS and was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Quartermaster Corps. My job in the Army was various. I had many different positions. You can see them on my LinkedIn profile. But one of the positions I had was mayor of our forward operating base in Iraq. So I am technically one of 2 candidates up here that have been a mayor. Now, with that said, it was in a hostile zone. And I'm sure Mayor Taylor can attest. I've heard that, it can be pretty hostile in our city government as well. But my responsibility as the mayor was to do basically what our current city manager does. And so I know what her responsibilities are because I've done them, like I said, in the combat zone. I am running for mayor simply because of the fact that when I retired in 2013, I saw our city in disarray. There were great things going on, but unfortunately, our taxpayers' dollars were being wasted. Our infrastructure was not growing as fast as our city was. Our education system was being used for a political agenda. And the list goes on. Our firefighters, police officers were not being given a fair deal. And the list goes on. And so I'm running for mayor because when I was younger, I was a Democrat. I became a Republican, and now I'm an independent. I tell people all the time that I am not a Democrat, a Republican, but an independent thinker. And what I plan to do is I plan to listen and be the voice of we the people. It is time that we the people truly have a voice in our city government. Career politicians always say the same thing. Vote for me and I'm going to be your voice. But the minute they get into office, they become the voice of a special interest group. That needs to change. It needs to change now. And I'm here to give we the people the voice that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Thank you. Good evening to all of you. My gratitude to the Alamo Community Group for hosting this evening's forum, and especially grateful to be on this particular time with public servants who have served this community, and hopefully former Commissioner Tommy Atkinson is on his way, and also very proud to be at this forum with someone who has given their career in service to our country. So Paul, I'm very grateful to be here with you tonight. Maybe it's no wonder that we've come across this evening with Commissioner Calvert asking the questions. We're right here. We're talking about housing. We're talking about the needs of the community. And if I know one thing, our newly sworn-in commissioner has hit the ground running and has made housing one of the premier priorities for Commissioners Court. He's got brave and bold new ideas. And you might ask, well, why is Leticia Vandepute, a pharmacist, a sixth-generation Texan, third-generation San Antonian, bragging about Commissioner Calvert? This is supposed to be about housing. But I'm going to tell you, this position is about being a leader. It's about being mayor. And it's about working together, bringing people together, making sure that you've got everyone at the table. For 24 years, I have been honored and humbled to serve in the Texas legislature, first as a representative and then as a state senator. My work there has always carried with it the desire to make sure that the home team was taken care of. And that means working for San Antonio, whether it was UTSA, the Health Science Center, Alamo Community Colleges, the Better Jobs Act, which we passed so that we could have things like pre-K for SA. All of the work that I've done, I've met Texans from great areas of this state, but it's always given me an intense appreciation of my own hometown. You know, what we need in San Antonio is leadership. I plan, as mayor, to bring that leadership back into the mayor's office so that you can have a city hall that is effective, that it's efficient, that it doesn't waste your taxpayer dollars, and that it's transparent. The thing that I do the best, okay, besides having the 6 kids and being able to now brag on 6 nearly perfect grandchildren, is to bring people together. Let's face it, we live in complex times, and we have challenges. And our families deserve the type of city hall that works just as hard as they do. Housing is a critical issue. I hope that all of you will not only participate in this election, but will actively go and vote for the 8th cent on the sales tax. Thank you so much. I look forward to the questions today, and I'm honored to be here.
Thank you, Senator, very much. We're going to move on to 3 questions, and if you're Streaming online, we'll have an opportunity for those of you online to submit questions via Twitter and online, and in the audience. You can get your questions ready and submit those. But first, these come from the Alamo Community Group. The first question is, and we'll continue to go in the order in which the introductions were made. So we'll start the first question with Mayor Taylor. Mayor Taylor, the city of San Antonio has made health and fitness a priority for the residents. If elected mayor of San Antonio, what would you do to make sure that park accessibility is made available throughout San Antonio? And please be specific.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's a great question. When we think about the health of the community, we have to think in a holistic fashion, and certainly the parks provide a great opportunity for people to recreate and be active so that they can be fit and they can be healthy. We have over 200 parks throughout our community. Some parks have more facilities and equipment than others. Certainly, I think it's important for us to plan strategically for the future so that all the parks can have, a range of equipment and services and programming in conjunction, especially with what the folks that live in that area nearby would like. However, I want to be realistic with you. I'm not going to just give you political platitudes and tell you what I think you want to hear, because what I know from working downtown for so long is that it's very difficult to have enough money to be able to maintain all the parks or to be able to create new parks in all the places that people would like to see them. So one of the things that we've been doing for the past few years is partnering with our school districts through a program called Spark Parks, where we have partnered to leverage the assets that school districts already have in the playgrounds that they have, and the city has provided funding to make improvements to them, and then have made agreements with the school districts to then make those playgrounds available to the community in areas where traditional parks are not available. So certainly I would love to see us continue replicating that program. I know we did one right over here in the Northeast over at Camelot Elementary School. We'd like to do that more across the city and allocate more money to the budget for that, but also maintaining the parks that we have and building on the trail system that we have, which I think is a great asset. I'd love to see us be able to find how we can create more neighborhood nodes that allow people to know that that Creekway trail system is available and right in their backyard.
Thank you, Mayor. Representative Villarreal, the same question for you. If elected mayor of San Antonio, what would you do to make sure that park accessibility is made available throughout San Antonio? And please be specific.
Yes. I think about how my family and I use the San Antonio River. We live about 4 blocks from the river, and there isn't a week that passes that we're not on the river riding bikes or walking the dog or taking a nature walk. That's the kind of quality of life that I want to make sure all families in San Antonio have access to. And that means, number one, we need to complete the Howard Peak Green Belt that has been paid for or built from 8 o'clock to 4 o'clock. We need to finish that out and connect it to the San Antonio River. And we can do that by passing Propositions 1 and 2 that protect the Edwards Aquifer and provide funding for this linear park system. We also need to continue the development of the creekways inside of that loop so that the residents that don't live nearby a creekway or the San Antonio River will eventually be reached by an existing creekway that's used only for flood control. We need to be really smart about our infrastructure projects. They need to hit multiple goals. They need to be about, for example, flood control and public health, recreation, another means of getting around town. That is how I see the linear park system and the development of the San Antonio River. We can extend that to more residents, especially if, number 2, we are more aggressive about our complete streets ordinance that's currently on the books, but isn't advanced aggressively enough. We need to give San Antonians more transportation options, not less. A complete street isn't just about a street, it's also about a wider sidewalk so that pedestrians can feel safer getting on foot, getting around town on foot, and also a protected bike lane. That is key to this city. These kind of infrastructure projects tie our city together, make it more compact, more united.
Major Martinez,
You know, that is a great question. And to an extent, I do agree with Representative Villarreal. You know, passing the linear parks is going to be a necessity for us to make parks more accessible to our families here, our citizens here in San Antonio. The way I see it, though, you know, Mayor Taylor brought up the reality when it comes to the money issue. And in reality, the issue is this. Right now, our city council wastes a lot of money. I am a Lean Six Sigma certified green belt, and so I know how to identify the 8 types of waste. What we do is we bring in change specialists to identify where that waste are going. And we look at rediverting those funds to programs that actually work, programs that make sense, programs that we, the people, are asking for, instead of what we, the special interest groups, are asking for. And so the way we get around this is we make VIA, and I applaud VIA. They are the best transportation system. Trust me, I grew up on them going to Lanier High School, Tapoya Middle School. I grew up on VIA. And so it is one of the greatest systems that we have in our nation. But at the same time, we do have to make them more effective. We have to make them more efficient. We have to work with VIA. We have to look at expanding our bike trails or our bike lanes on the roads. They're nowhere near where they should be. As a paratrooper of the United States Army, trust me, I know about physical fitness. And I know how hard it is to maintain your physical fitness. But it's something that has to be done. Even people like myself have to remain physically fit. I was medically retired for having diabetes. And so I know the importance of physical fitness, especially in childhood obesity here in San Antonio. And so we need to encourage it as much as possible and do everything that we can to make sure that our children and our families have access to parks and bike trails. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Vanderpuy.
Thank you very much. You know, when you think about how we grew up, and I grew up near Woodlawn Lake, where our family would go to go feed the ducks. We live about a block and a half now from where I grew up, and I used to take my children to Woodlawn Lake to feed the ducks, to enjoy the amenities there. Not all San Antonians have that benefit. And I believe, Commissioner, the question was about the health of our children and about our obesity rates. Our parks are one part of that. As mayor, I would make sure that from the very beginning, the Planning Commission, the Zoning Commission, that you have someone there that's an expert in public health. Because when you plan a community, when you zone something, that's when you have to make sure that it's walkable, that it has those bike avenues there. So what we're doing now is because we didn't embed that process from the very beginning. So the question is about the health of our children and the health of the community. Let me tell you, our children can improve their health when they can play outside. And when our communities are safe, our children can play in the front yard and not be afraid and have to play in the backyard. We want to get back to that point. So let me tell you, it is public safety, it is at the Planning Commission, it's at the Zoning Commission, and you put the overlay of public health and the good and the public safety of our children. Families aren't going to use a park unless it's safe. And so I hope that citizens will come and vote, as I do, and my family will, for Propositions 1 and 2. We need to get better. But what we have to do is get in front of the problem. And what I know is that I've been able, for 24 years, to look at something and look at it from around the corner, so that you don't have to kick the can down the road and pay for it later in the game.
Thank you. We are moving into our second question. Thank you for your questions coming in from Twitter and coming in here from the audience. The second question, and we'll start again with Mayor Taylor. In San Antonio, the average 2-bedroom apartment rents for $857 a month, and the Broadway Pearl and downtown area rents anywhere from $1,200 to $2,500 a month. In Texas, the minimum wage rate per hour is $7.25, which is far less than $12.78, the necessary wage rate to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. Knowing that information, what policies would you support to help increase affordable housing availability in the city of San Antonio?
Wow. All right. So, for those that know me, you know that this is my area here. This is what I have spent my career focusing on, and really the main reason why I got on the road of being an elected official. So, I could tackle this from a couple of angles, but I would say certainly that we can work to increase resources that are available for affordable housing, though that is challenging because the dollars that are coming from the federal government have been decreasing. I was the grants manager for the home program for 5 years at the city of San Antonio. That's the money we get from HUD to help build projects like this. So in light of the fact that those dollars are continuing to decrease, we've got to be more creative, which means that we've got to engage in more partnerships with folks who are building any type of housing to try and provide incentives for them to include affordable units. We have also got to look at the other side, which is focused on how we can increase household income, because we shouldn't just assume that, you know, a single mom who's maybe lives here at Bentley and has an affordable rate, that her kids will then need an affordable apartment. So you all are doing a great job here in providing resources and services that will allow the residents to be able to improve their education, improve their skill set, and access jobs that will allow them to be able to earn a wage where they can pay for a more costly apartment, because we know the cost of everything continues to increase. But some of the things that I'm working on right now is that we've set a housing policy summit or conference. It's scheduled for May 15th. And then also, one of the key reasons I want to continue serving as mayor is so that I can push for us to have a line item in the 2017 bond that would be related to housing and neighborhoods. So those are some concrete things that are happening right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Representative Villarreal, you need me to repeat the question? There was a lot of mathematical equations in that.
I took notes.
Okay.
So thank you. The city of San Antonio needs a housing policy. We haven't had a housing policy in years. We now are seeing movement now that it's election time. But this is something that should have been on the books for a decade. This is not a new concern. Housing needs to be a priority at City Hall. Here's what I would do. Number one, when a developer comes to City Hall asking something of us, your representatives, we should have a policy to ask something of them. If they want to come to City Hall asking for a subsidy, a tax abatement, a zoning change, that is the time to say, well, what will you do for the larger community in setting aside workforce housing to make sure that as we grow downtown or any neighborhood around our major employment centers, that we have opportunities for all workers to live near where they work. Workforce housing is crucial. I want to see downtown develop in a way where kids of different backgrounds, different income groups can live and play together and go to school together. And that means these developments that are taking place have to have a set aside for families that work downtown, including at our hotels and our restaurants. That's very important. The bond issue that's coming up in 2017 is an opportunity for us to address citywide concerns. My number one priority is investing in infrastructure that ties us together better: transportation, roads, complete streets, our linear park system, our park system in general. But we also need to carve out space for the concerns of different neighborhood areas. And affordable housing is a very important issue in particularly our older neighborhoods and our inner city neighborhoods. And so that also needs to be on the table. Thank you.
Major Martinez.
You really took the wind out of my sails on that one, because that's exactly where I was headed. We do need to look at housing policy. I'm all for business. I'm all for bringing businesses to San Antonio. But it can never be at the expense of we the people. We can never give so much to a business that we the people suffer in the process. That's the bottom line. We the people is what makes this city so great, not we the businesses. It is we the people. And so we need to make sure that the gentrification of downtown stops. The gentrification of the east side stops. We bring all these businesses in here, these housing developers, and they raise the rates astronomically, like in the Mission Park trails, forcing we the people to move. It is unacceptable. You never do anything at the expense of we the people. But yet that's where our career politicians and our current elected officials are taking us. We need to stop. We also need to look at the education of our children. You know, I always thought that when I grew up, I was a Democrat, like I said, and they talked about the minimum wage. And one day I heard a gentleman say, you should focus on what the minimum wage is, but you really shouldn't worry about it in the end, because you should be looking at excelling and exceeding what the minimum wage is. It is a starting point for you. And so we need to look at focusing on the education of our children so they don't have to worry about low-income housing, because they are educated enough to get out there and become the future CEOs and the future leaders of our nation. And so that's what I would focus on as well when it comes to the housing, is the education of our children and preparing them for a future that they don't have to worry about low-income housing.
Senator Vanderpute?
Thank you. I think the question was about the city's housing policy and what would I do as mayor to improve that or to put it in the forefront. You're absolutely right. It's been on a back burner. We went through this Vision 2020 process, and we know that it was one of the things that were identified. But the major discussions were about housing in the urban core in that city. And we've seen success with about 4,000 housing units in that downtown core. We know that that's going to double. The problem is the rent for square footage is anywhere from $1.50 to $2 a square foot in that urban core, placing it out of the reach of most families. As mayor, number one, I would make sure to maximize those taxpayer dollars. You've got federal dollars, you have some state, and we could partner with Bexar County and see how we could maximize that. It's the same taxpayer. Did you know that the city of San Antonio's housing policy is in direct opposite of the state of Texas? So those tax credits, those availability of drawing those funds down are going to go to other communities. The state of Texas rules want affordable housing all over a city and a community, not just targeted into areas of low socioeconomic. The city policy currently is to focus on older neighborhoods, and that should be a part of it. But you've got a city and a state that's working against each other. You need leadership in the mayor's office to make sure that we can maximize those dollars for the efficiencies of the taxpayers and make sure that we've got a sound policy that brings every single dollar, because we've got 40,000 people on a wait list right now. Thank you.
In the interest of fairness, we're going to start with you again, Senator Vanderpute, and work back with the third question. And thank you for those of you online who are submitting your questions on Twitter. They're coming in great. There's still opportunities for those of you in the audience, if you have a question, to submit it before we move on. So the last question that I will ask is to Senator Vanderpute to start. The city of San Antonio is proposing an annexation plan that would incorporate different parts of Bexar County without increasing the tax rate and negatively impacting the response time of our first responders. What would you propose as the mayor in handling this issue?
The city's annexation plan is extremely aggressive. The most we had ever done before was about 40,000 new citizens in every year for a 2-year period. What is proposed is very aggressive, close to 200,000 citizens. It would make San Antonio the 5th largest city. And I am not opposed to annexation, but I fail to be convinced at this point if that annexation very aggressively can occur without any raising taxes, and we cannot raise our taxes. So what does that mean? Do the new communities now get to pay city taxes but don't have fire and police, don't have the streets and the drainage projects? Right now, our city has over $1 billion of deferred maintenance on our streets and our thoroughfares and many of that. Who's going to pay? So until I am convinced that we don't have to raise taxes and be so aggressive, I want to make sure that we've got a sound plan to make sure that we're not taxing citizens on that, and it's got to be mutually agreeable, that it's a benefit to those new citizens that are coming in the boundaries of the city, but the city's responsibility to get those citizens the services.
Major Martinez. Sure. The City of San Antonio is proposing an annexation plan that would incorporate different parts of Bexar County without increasing the tax rate and negatively impacting the response time of our first responders. What would you propose as a mayoral candidate or as a mayor in handling this issue?
You know, when it comes to the annexation of other areas into San Antonio, I too am not opposed to it. But we do have to make sure that these people are represented properly, and that they are provided the services that every other neighborhood within San Antonio is guaranteed at this time. Again, I go back to the waste that's being spent on our taxpayer dollars. When we look at reducing the rate, at reducing the waste that's being spent right now, we can actually look at providing more firefighters, more police officers, equipping them properly, reducing their response time in order to support the annexation of these cities. Remember that they will be taxed just the way we will. There's just not going to be an increase in their taxes. And so that is more revenue coming into the city of San Antonio to allow us to hire more police officers, to allow us to hire more firefighters. You know, again, to me, it goes back to the fraud, the waste, and the abuse of our taxpayers' dollars, making sure that our city is working efficiently and as effectively as possible when it comes to the taxpayers' dollars. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you all work hard for your money. And for it to just be taken from you in the form of taxation and not be utilized properly, I'm pretty sure it kind of makes you upset. And so we need to bring in change specialists that are going to look at the tax dollars, see where it's being spent, see how it's being spent, and make sure that we're putting into programs that actually make sense and are going to end up saving taxpayers in the long run. And so, again, I'm not opposed to annexation, but we need to make sure that they are represented properly. So.
Mayor Taylor? Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. Representative Villarreal.
Thank you. For our hardworking taxpayers who are annexed by the city, they need to be provided full services. If they're going to pay the full tax bill, on the principle of fairness, they need to be able to receive the same kind of services that the rest of San Antonians enjoy. And they need to be able to vote for their elected officials and for bond issues. I believe staff has at one point proposed a partial annexation that essentially allows for the collection of taxes, but not the full rights of voting for elected officials. That doesn't seem fair to me. And so on the basis of fairness, I think if we're going to be taxing these new residents of San Antonio, then we need to be providing them the same level of benefits, services, and the right to vote for elected officials. I think annexation needs to be looked at in terms of more than 1 year. You need to think about it across time, because this is really about making sure that we grow in a way that the infrastructure that's developing outside the city is knitted together more seamlessly with our existing infrastructure. And so that a lower level of standard is not being met, and then the city is coming in and having to redo streets and redo drainage and flood control at a much higher expense. And so whatever we do, we need to really think about the long-term cost and benefits of annexing land.
And now, Mayor Taylor.
Thank you. Well, I have been part of the council. I was part of the council when this issue first came up, and as your mayor, I've also presided in the discussions on this issue. We've had some very thoughtful discussions. It is a difficult issue, and I've always promoted balanced growth throughout our city, and I think that's certainly one of the key aspects that we're considering. Also, we have to operate within the confines of state law, which, you know, provides us some constraints in relation to annexation. So I think we're doing a great job at trying to anticipate where the growth is, work within the confines of the laws that the state has created, but also see those opportunities for us to capture revenue in areas where there's growth and development, where there's new housing and commercial centers. We can capture that revenue and then be able to use that to provide services, but also we have to recognize and work in collaboration with the other jurisdictions. The counties are limited in the services that they can provide, but there's still growth occurring in the counties. Anybody that lives in this part of town, you can't tell me that you're not affected at all by Camelot 2, right? The county does not have the ability to provide code compliance in that area, which leads to crime in other areas that spill over into the adjacent areas. So annexation is a way for us to be able to take control in relation to development and having rules in place that would protect the people who ultimately live adjacent to those communities. So I see annexation as an opportunity for us, that in conjunction with our comprehensive plan that we're developing to help us prepare for the year 2040, by which we anticipate 1 million new residents in our city, I think working together, we can strike a compromise that benefits everyone.
Candidates have done a very good job of keeping their responses to 2 minutes. And now we're going to the Twitterverse. This is a Twitter question from Debbie Forstello. We'll start with Senator Vandepute again. What's your position on Uber and Lyft?
It's very painful for, I think, our community to see what has been occurring with regard to rideshare at City Hall. You know, San Antonio, 7th largest city, and with a strong annexation plan, 5th largest city. We might want to start acting like it. There is a way for us to make sure that people in this community have options on rideshare and ensure public safety. It's been done in other cities. It's painful to watch this unfold in the newspaper, in the media, the back and forth. Because I'm going to tell you, how is we as a city are going to continue to attract jobs to make sure that we've got that growth environment if we can't handle things that other communities have handled all over the country? It's a lack of leadership. And I think there's a way to get there. Seems to me we just haven't had enough want to the want to, as my grandmother used to say. But the goals are not mutually exclusive. We've got to ensure the safety and make sure that our citizens have those options. How sad is it when we drive folks away from this community because we don't embrace what is the possible? As mayor, I would look forward and embrace the possible, working with council members to make sure that we don't have these flip-flops constantly on city policy, rideshare, and on other issues as well.
Major Martinez, what's your position on Uber?
You know, when it comes to Uber and Lyft, the restrictions that are currently put on Uber and Lyft, it's not an issue about us not wanting to be the only largest city in the United States that doesn't embrace the technology. The issue is that our city has put limitations on free enterprise. When you limit free enterprise, it's never a good thing. Uber and Lyft are independent drivers. A lot of military spouses, they utilize Uber and Lyft as a source of income for them, for themselves. We cannot afford to limit free enterprise whatsoever. It sends a bad message to the rest of this country that other businesses that want to bring their businesses to San Antonio. Now, that does not mean that we just give carte blanche to Uber and Lyft. I read today that Uber once again threatened to pull out of San Antonio. And so here's my message to Uber. If you refuse to comply with public safety issues, then in reality, we don't need your business here. Because we the people and our public safety comes first. We're not afraid to lower the standards. For example, an inspection that has to go through a certified city-approved inspector. That's, you know, my buddy over there owns this car shop, and I want him to use this business, you know, so I'm going to make him go over there to get approved. Wrong answer. But that does not mean that you shouldn't adhere to a drug test or to a 10-point fingerprint inspection. Public safety comes first. And so while we welcome your business, don't think we're going to put the public safety before your business. Thank you.
Representative Villarreal, what's your position on Uber?
I support rideshare. I want the city of San Antonio to not be left behind in the 21st century. We need to be able to embrace technology. We need to be able to develop a regulatory framework that allows for both more transportation options and public safety. Now, this technology is new. It's just emerging. But let me tell you about the benefits to San Antonio. In a city with too few transportation options, this is an additional one. In a city with a high incidence of driving while intoxicated, this is a public safety solution for those who've had one too many drinks and don't want to get behind the wheel. In a city where we have students and we have senior citizens who are earning extra dollars, making ends meet, this is an economic opportunity for them. Just the other day, I took a Lyft vehicle down to City Hall when it was time to draw numbers from a hat and find our place on the ballot. I took a ride back to the office, and the gentleman who was giving me the ride is a senior citizen who lives at the Granada Homes. He told me he loves this job. It allows him to earn more money, make ends meet. He gets to meet new people. He provides this service. He maintains his car. He takes a lot of pride in this job. We should be allowing this kind of free enterprise. If other Texas cities have figured out how to have rideshare, so can we.
Mayor Taylor, what's your position on this?
Well, I'll be talking a lot more about it tomorrow as well. So for those of you who have been watching from the sidelines and unfolding in the media and newspaper, let me tell you what it's really been like in sitting down at the table with the folks from the TNCs, as well as other companies here in town, to figure out how we could develop the best regulatory framework, because we embrace innovation. We want to see expanded transportation options here in San Antonio, but not at the expense of the public safety. Now let me ask you, as reasonable people, you all look like reasonable people. Do you think it's reasonable for us to expect background checks, random drug testing, vehicle inspections, and insurance coverage for people who are going to be transporting you? I think that's reasonable. That's what we've been talking about. We had a framework in place back in December. We saw how dynamic this issue is. The insurance marketplace hasn't even caught up with the technology. So I, as mayor, asked my colleagues, I said, I want to bring this back because things have changed since December. We need to take another look at it, find the areas where we're able to be flexible as a city, and see how we can get these TNCs to stay here in San Antonio. Tomorrow at our city council meeting, I will be bringing forward an ordinance that covers those basic points, okay? All of us reasonable people think that's reasonable. If the TNCs don't think that's reasonable, then I don't know, how they'll be able to, I don't know if they'll be able to adjust their business model or what their next step will be, but I know that my focus is not on their business model. My focus is on public safety here in San Antonio.
We're going to ask that you hold your applause until the end. Thank you. And Mayor Taylor, we're going to come back to you on this question from Twitter. It's about Major League Soccer in San Antonio. Would you support another major sports team in San Antonio?
Yes, I certainly would. And I've also been involved in quite a few discussions as your mayor on this topic as well, not just soccer, but some other sports. There are many people in the community who feel that soccer is probably going to be an easier win for us here. We just have not got the right deal on the table yet, but the council and the manager have been very engaged in discussions with folks throughout the community who are interested in bringing Major League Soccer. We have a big game coming up at the Alamo Dome in April. I hope everybody comes out to that. I think the attendance at that game is going to show those folks who are looking at San Antonio as a market that there is a lot of support for Major League Soccer here. And as mayor, I'd love to be able to cross the finish line on that for our city.
All right, we'll go now to Representative Villarreal.
I think San Antonio is ready for Major League Soccer. What I love about soccer is that, number one, it's an accessible sport. Kids can start playing it, both genders, boys and girls, at the youngest ages, and keep playing it as they grow. And in our city, we could use the presence of MLS as a way of building out this sort of pipeline of young athletes that acquire the habits and the experiences of playing this sport, acquiring exercise, and just living a healthy life, not just at the young ages, but as they age. Major League Soccer is also more accessible in that the tickets are much more affordable. Unlike other sports, you can actually take a family to go see a soccer game and not have to, mortgage the house. And so in a lot of these ways, I think San Antonio is ready to embrace it because we can integrate it into our culture here, a family-friendly culture, and we can introduce it as a way of encouraging everybody at the youngest ages to play this sport and to be involved athletically and acquire the traits of a healthy life.
Thank you. Major Martinez.
I do believe that San Antonio is ready for a Major League Soccer team, but I also believe that San Antonio is ready for a professional football team as well. I tell people all the time that I will be a Cowboys fan until the day that I die, or at least until the day that San Antonio finally gets a professional football team. San Antonio is going to be the 5th largest city once the annexation occurs, and for us not to have a professional soccer team, a professional football team, or a professional baseball team, it needs to change. I mean, when you look at what happened in New Orleans, and they brought the Saints down to San Antonio. If I remember correctly, that Alamo Dome was sold out every single Sunday, supported not by New Orleans fans, but by San Antonio fans. And it's because San Antonio supports not only its Spurs, but it would support a professional football team, a professional soccer team, and a professional baseball team. That's just how sports-minded we are here in San Antonio. We are in South Texas. High school football is big here. UTSA's football games as well. And so it's time that we utilize the Alamo Dome, what it was built for. That we utilize the Toyota Center, what it's built for, and that's professional sports, not amateur. Nothing wrong with our amateur teams, but it's time we get into the big league, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank
you. I'm going to make this unanimous. San Antonio is ready and poised to land Major League Soccer. We're season ticket holders for the Scorpions, and you know how we have built up because they have great crowds. We lead attendance in the league. We've had great seasons, but it's also the working with the community, those youth soccer networks, little boys and little girls. This community loves soccer, and it will show up. So let me tell you a little thing that you may not know. Do you remember when Haiti had the horrible natural disaster? Well, we had gotten a phone call from a connection at ESPN because for countries like Haiti, soccer is affordable. Children of all economic lives and strata can play it because it's the ball in the field. And they felt that if they could compete their national Haiti team, that it would bring pride back. The problem? They didn't have any fields. All the fields were nothing but tent cities. Someone called and said, doesn't San Antonio take in teams that have been displaced by natural disasters? And so we led the effort with the San Antonio Sports Foundation, with Connections. We hosted 30 of the Haitian soccer players and their coaches, the ones that survived the earthquake, here in San Antonio. And we saw the college teams, the professional teams, people from all over the state rally because it was soccer. It brings that pride, but it also brings in the community. San Antonio's ready. That ought to be our first step, and it brings so much value to so many families. Besides, you need to go on dollar hot dog night. It is very affordable.
All right, we are reaching towards the home stretch of this debate. We've got 2 questions from the audience that have been submitted. And the first question, we'll start again with Senator Van de Putte. What new veteran programs are being implemented to combat homeless veterans in the San Antonio area?
You know, San Antonio has the tagline of Military City, USA. But the stark reality is that we're not Veteran City, USA. For over 10 years, I've served as the chair of the Senate Committee on Veteran Affairs and Military Installations, passing legislation, working with our veteran community, educational opportunities, college credit for heroes, the housing programs. And I can tell you that as a community, we should be ashamed if there's one veteran that sleeps under a bridge tonight. We know that the efforts of Haven for Hope and others have helped. We know that we could do more. As mayor, I would put an office of Veteran Affairs in City Hall, because what we have to do now, it's in health, it's in housing, it's in community development. There is no one central port to help coordinate. The county has a veteran service officer. Other communities that don't have as many veterans as we do have that embedded. We have a task force, we have a council, but we don't have that focus. Our city needs to be respectful of veterans, and that means from homelessness, helping them through those wounds, especially the wounds that we don't see, and then on to gainful employment. San Antonio can do better, and as mayor, I would put forth the effort that we're not just Military City, USA, but that we're Veteran City, USA.
Major Martinez, the same question for you.
I've got to say I'm a little bit of bias on this question here because I am a veteran of the United States Army. But I do have to agree, with Senator Van de Putte. We brag about being, Military City, USA, and yet we have homeless veterans out there. A lot of my friends have called me asking for help, and my number, if you ever call me, you'll see an Alaska number returned, and that's because my paratroopers still call me from my Alaska phone. And my phone is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just for them. We need to focus not only on our homeless veterans, but as well as the post-traumatic stress disorder that they go through when they get back. And trust me, I know they go through it. We need to address their suicide rate because it is very high. Our veterans were willing to sacrifice their lives for this great nation. I lost a lot of friends because of it. And for them to come home and not be treated with the dignity and respect and given every single helping hand that they can, it's unacceptable. And so I, too, would look at establishing a Veteran Affairs office within the mayor for the simple fact that we need to focus on our veterans. We brag about Military City, USA. Let's not be about it. Let's not just talk about it. Let's be about it, And so the way I see it is we can work with Haven for Hope, but we need to bring in the faith-based community as well. Faith-based communities, this is what they're trained for. They're trained to take care of the homeless, not just veterans, but all homeless. When it comes to they're hungry, they're trained to take care of the hungry and have food banks for them. We need to get the faith-based community back involved in taking care of we the people. It cannot be a city operation alone, but has to be a faith-based operation as well.
Representative Villarreal.
Well, it's my turn to agree with Paul. I believe we need to live up to our legacy as being Military City USA, and it means partnering with other organizations, including the faith community. Faith community has a very important role to play in serving others, particularly veterans. The issues that are on the top of my mind that I know we need to do better at include mental health services, housing for veterans, workforce development opportunities. We need to celebrate the biggest employers that set jobs aside, give preference to our veterans. We need to do all these things, and the most effective way to do them is in partnership with others. with our community college system that is educating and providing wraparound services to thousands of veterans. At San Antonio College, there's a special program. There's 3,000 veterans that receive services counseling, both academic and career readiness counseling. We need to partner with our universities. Texas A&M San Antonio is very proud of its program to help veterans, not just the students, but their spouses and their family members, the children, transition back into the community after their loved one has returned from overseas service. We need to do much better at mental health. And this is particularly acute with veterans, but honestly, this is a larger problem throughout our city, particularly helping people who have addictions get off those addictions so they can take advantage of these other services. There's a lot that needs to be done, and to do them effectively, we need a mayor who sees their role as a partner with our other local agencies and the faith-based community. Because there are certain things that can only be done effectively by somebody who's bringing their whole heart and soul to another person to touch them and encourage them along. Thank
you.
Thank you. Well, first, let me start out by thanking Mr. Martinez for his service to our nation. We appreciate you and all the other veterans that are here today. Well, as your mayor, at 10 o'clock this morning, I had a press conference with several community partners where we announced the Mayor's Challenge to End Veterans Homelessness, which is an initiative that's happening in many cities across the nation. And as your mayor, I've made that commitment that we want to end, and we will end veteran homelessness here as well. We've already deployed some of our staff to other cities to learn from them. In particular, Phoenix has dramatically decreased their veteran homelessness. So we're working to streamline the system that we have with the many service providers like American GI Forum and Haven for Hope, Family Endeavors, and several others to make it easier for veterans to transition to a place of stability. And so we will definitely continue in that effort. As your mayor, I've also taken the step to engage our faith community. We held an interfaith gathering about a month or so ago where we talked to folks about how they can better work with the city and other institutional partners in addressing community challenges like veterans homelessness. As a champion for affordable housing, I have to say, though, that part of the challenge is we have to figure out how to provide more housing units on the ground as well. That goes back to where we started in the original discussion related to affordable housing, and I've had the privilege of being able to work on some projects that did provide housing for our veterans. And then also I'll just add that as the District 2 council member, I also championed partnership with St. Philip's College to create the Veterans Outreach and Transition Center to help veterans to be able to go back to school, get into careers so they won't have to end up in a state of being homeless, and championed and got $3 million from the city budget towards that project, which we're currently working to implement.
Thank you. The last question from the audience today is as follows. We're going to start with Senator Vandepute. The question is, currently, Latino and minority arts organizations receive only 15% of the hotel occupancy tax. 85% goes to the San Antonio Museum of Art, the Whitty Museum, the Children's Museum, and the Briscoe Museums. What are your thoughts on this inequity?
San Antonians value the arts. We're a city of music, of dance, of celebration. And anybody who's lived in San Antonio has been through the rodeo and fiesta knows that. But it's not just those events. It's what's happening at the Southwest Craft Center. It's the things that occur at the Botanical Gardens. It's the myriad of artists, and it's both in music, in literature, in ink, and technology, theater. But you're right. Not everybody has got a seat at the table. As mayor, when those budget processes are coming through, sure, it's important to support those major institutions. But sometimes It's those that are very grassroots, those that represent that cultural heritage that are so very important. And they don't have that type of representation. We are a multicultural, a multi-ethnic, a multi-faith community. And in every budget item, especially in the arts, it needs to be reflected of the diversity of this community. As mayor, I would make sure that in working with our council, that we've got that reflection of the diversity of this community in those budget expenditures.
Thank you. Major Martinez?
You know, for me, you know, if I were to be elected mayor of San Antonio, it's all about equality, is the bottom line. When it comes to the arts, I am also biased on that. And the reason is my wife graduated from St. Mary's University with a music degree. I was taught by Mr. Ortiz and Roland San Miguel to be a mariachi when I was in high school at Lanier High School.
You were very good.
Oh, thank you. And so, you know, my daughter is actually, you know, in college right now. She was going to be a voice major as well. And my son is currently in the theater department over at Rawlinson Rawlinson Middle School. And so the arts are very important to us, but it's got to be divided fairly. Whether it is African American arts, whether it is Latino arts, or any other type of art. Art is art, and it's critical to our society. One of the reasons, in my personal opinion, our society is going down is because we have kicked the arts out of school. The arts make us well-rounded individuals. The arts help develop our creativity. The arts are what make our society as great as it has. The Mona Lisa, the Picassos, the Beethovens, the Bachs, our actors, our actresses. But we have to encourage it all the way around, not be biased to certain institutions. Because a lot of those institutions, believe it or not, bring money in. Trust me, I am a member of the Whitty Museum, an annual member of the Whitty Museum. And so I pay for that membership. But what about that small community playhouse on the west side or on the south side or on the east side? That's who needs the money. And we need to look at equality when we look at that budget.
Representative Villarreal.
The arts are important in San Antonio. Yeah, I talk often about building San Antonio as a city of opportunity, and often that's a lot about upgrading the workforce, providing quality educational opportunities for high school students and adults who want to come back to education to acquire 21st century skills and beyond. But arts is also a part of our economy. There have been studies that have found that for every dollar invested in arts, $8 are generated back into the economy. And so we need to see it much more broadly. Certainly, Paul brought up the education aspect. If all of our children had access to quality arts education at the earliest ages, we would be doing a much better job of graduating students who are creative, who are problem solvers, who have more control over finding strategies and solving problems instead of following instruction, which too often our schools are all about. Here's what I would do with arts funding. Number one, I recognize that the city currently has a policy that says it's a matching program. If a cultural arts organization wants some city dollars, they need to leverage private donations. I think that is smart, and that helps our limited dollars go further. But we also have to recognize that there are arts institutions and neighborhoods that are a part of San Antonio that have historically been underinvested in. And so I think we need balance in our arts funding. It's important to have a program of leveraging private dollars, but there are some organizations that have been neglected for decades that need to be shored up and invested in and strengthened.
Thank you. Mayor Taylor.
Okay, all right, thank you. Very interesting question, great question, thank you for it. Yes, I agree with much of what's been said. The arts are a very important component of our quality of life here, and so we want to to support as many different types of organizations as we can. Of course, funding is always a limiting factor. Those large organizations are important to our economy. Some of them serve as a basis for some of the tourism that occurs here, which of course is, has an impact, has ripple effects on many of us. But for those of you who've known me in my work, I've been associated and affiliated with smaller nonprofits for much of my career and have been an advocate for those grassroots organizations that often touch people in different ways. I think part of the challenge for many of those organizations is that people aren't aware of the great work that they do. And so certainly I have tried, both as council member and as mayor, to highlight and promote those. And when I have the opportunity to talk with influential people who ask me, well, how can I be of service in our community, I often direct them to those small organizations that they may not have ever heard of. And I think that gives those groups an opportunity to be able to build their audience and build their donor base. And so I'd love to be able to think more creatively about how we can give those opportunities to more of the smaller nonprofits, while also seeing if we need to make any adjustments to the current funding formulas.
Thank you very much, candidates, for keeping it civil tonight. You're now on to your final 2 minutes of closing statements. We started with Mayor Taylor, so we'll start with Senator Vanderputte.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity for all of us to be here tonight. And as you can see and look around, the room is full, even with impending weather that's approaching that is less desirable to travel in. So the gift you've given of your time shows how engaged you are. And for that, I think as a community, we are extremely grateful. San Antonio is at a crossroads right now. We know that people want to come here. And we also know from the enthusiasm of San Antonio families that we are growing. The real question in this mayor's race is one about leadership. Who can best lead and work with council to make sure that San Antonio turns its challenges into opportunities? That we can make sure that we've got a structure where city government works and really pays attention to what it's supposed to do first in public safety, in streets and infrastructure. And always, it's job creation. It's the jobs that are going to sustain us and make sure that our children, when they graduate and get from those schools, that they're able to have their careers here. Pete and I are lucky. Our 6 children, 5 of them have returned. And that there have been times when we thought that that wouldn't happen. But as mayor, I would bring that proven leadership, the ability to work with people, the ability to bring people to the table, to look around the corner and see what are our challenges and work them on ahead of time and not kick the can down the road so we find ourselves in the position, quite frankly, that we're in right now. San Antonians' best days are ahead. We're hardworking, we're creative, and we can be that next great American city. I humbly ask for your support and your vote for Mayor of San Antonio. And thank you to you tonight.
Major Martinez, you've got 2 minutes to make closing remarks.
First of all, again, I do want to say thank you to the Alamo Community Group for hosting this forum here and mostly for inviting me to the forum. Senator Vanderputte is right. San Antonio's at a crossroads. The question is, do we want to continue to elect career politicians? That's the question. Do we want to continue to elect career politicians who always say the exact same thing? Vote for me and I'm going to be your voice. And the minute they get elected, they become the voice of a political party, the voice of we a special interest group, the voice of we a political agenda. And in the process, we the people suffer for it. As the mayor of San Antonio, I vow to listen to we the people. You see, I tell people all the time, we may agree and we may disagree. And so we're going to agree to disagree. But in the end, understand this. When it comes to a vote, I know how to take the emotional step back and vote based upon what we the people want. See, because I understand that I will not be elected to represent myself, a political party, or a special interest group. I understand that I am one voice out of 1.5 million people in San Antonio. And I understand that I am elected to represent we the people. And so I ask that if you're ready for leadership, leadership with vision, leadership with vision and will listen to we the people. I know what it means to serve the people. I've done it for many years. And so I ask that you consider me for mayor of San Antonio. I ask for your vote and for your support because it's time, San Antonio. Thank you.
And Representative Villarreal, you also have 2 minutes.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here and taking your questions. Since last May, I've devoted myself to listening to San Antonians across the city and across the political spectrum. I've been focused on running for just one office and pursuing just one goal, and that is to make San Antonio a city of opportunity for our children. I'm a candidate who can unite San Antonio, who can build support across our city to do the hard work of taking on major challenges like affordable housing, annexation, public safety, investing in infrastructure, keeping our city's finances rock solid so we can continue to provide for generations to come. In my 15 years as a state legislature, this has been my approach. I've been focused in those years, I had been focused on serving our public school students, our homeowners, and those in need. My approach was simple: keep focused on a clear goal and be willing to work with all comers. That explained my success in the legislature, and that will be the approach I bring to City Hall. Let me tell you, if we want to build a city of opportunity for our kids, we need a mayor who will lead not just when it's election time. We will need a mayor whose word is good. We will need a mayor who will unite this city behind an agenda that serves all of our interests. Together, we can build a city strong, ready, and prepared for the future. Thank you.
And our final closing remarks from Mayor Taylor.
Well, thank you, everyone, for your time and attention, for being here, being engaged in the process. Well, I am asking for your support to allow me to continue serving as your mayor. Serving as your mayor is not a political stepping stone for me, nor is it a plan B. I think during the time that I've been in this office, I've demonstrated the skills, the talents that I have. I've demonstrated my commitment to being responsive to the citizens of San Antonio, to addressing the key issues of the day without an eye towards my political future or what the political winds say, but just focused on what's best for San Antonio. And with that in mind, as your mayor, I've been able to bring the police back to the table, which there was no negotiating happening when I became mayor. I've been able to lead the council in a major water project, water supply project, the first of its kind. We've been trying to get here for 30 years. We've crossed the approval finish line on that, and I need to stay in place so that we can see that project constructed. I stopped the unpopular streetcar project in response to citizens' concerns. I've reached out to the faith-based community to engage them because I recognize that government can't do everything that we need to have happen in our community. And I've shown that I'm someone who's willing to listen to all sides and able to lead my council colleagues as a team leader. And so if you would like to continue the momentum that we have, if you would like to have stability and leadership at City Hall, then I ask that on May 9th that you would vote for me, or even earlier during early voting. Thank you.
Early voting in the mayoral election is April 27th through May the 5th from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Polls will be open on Election Day, May 9th. This is not an easy task. I went through 3 rounds of this, so please give all of our candidates a big round of applause.